Is there any hope that the U.S. and Ukraine are going to be trying to negotiate for some sort of peace agreement with Russia?
This is, Kim, not unlike the virus story in that the government lies relentlessly about why we are in this war, what's happening in the war, and therefore what is going to happen. The two, the biggest lie is where this war came from. And I have a view that is deeply founded, I'm going to say, because I know a lot about this over the past 30 years. This is a war, in my view, that arose because the US, rather pig-headedly, in other words, relentlessly, stubbornly, insisted on pushing NATO farther to the east every step of the way. And the Russians kept saying, don't expand NATO towards us. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that to Ukraine. We don't want your military on our border. Do you get it? And the United States said, what? We don't hear you. No, don't worry. We're peace loving. We love you. We want to destroy you. We want to decolonize you. We want to break you up. We want to do all sorts. But we love you. And we never go to war except in bombing Belgrade for 7 straight weeks. And oh, yeah, and Afghanistan we occupied for 15 years as NATO. And the Iraq war was unprovoked. And yeah, we tried to overthrow your ally Assad with the CIA regime change operation. And oh yeah, NATO took out Gaddafi. And yeah, we are placing missiles nearby you in Poland and Romania because we unilaterally abandoned the anti-ballistic missile treaty. But we're peace loving, and of course we're going to move NATO right up to your 2,300 kilometer border, and not just in Ukraine, but we're going to do it in Georgia. Fascinating, by the way. People, please take out a map and look up Georgia, not the one next to Florida, but Georgia in the Black Sea, on the eastern boundary of the Black Sea, because that country is not a North Atlantic country. So why would it ever be in NATO? And yet the United States wants to push NATO to Georgia. And if you look at a map, I can explain in 30 seconds why that is, because the intention of the United States is to surround Russia in the Black Sea. Ukraine, Romania, Bulgaria, Turkey, and Georgia creates an encirclement. And Russia's naval fleet, the Black Sea Warm Water Naval Fleet, is in Sevastopol, Crimea. And it's been there, by the way, since 1783. And there was already one major war in the 19th century between 1853 and 1856, where the British had the idea, get rid of that naval fleet. And in the late 20th century, Zbigniew Brzezinski had the same idea, surround Russia by getting Ukraine into the Western camp and actually into NATO. And then Russia ceases to be a major power, is their theory. Well, to make a long story short, this is the major reason for this war, and we've never been told the truth about it. And that is really devastating. Second, closely related issue is that in February 2014, the US conspired to overthrow the government of Ukraine. And it did so. That's not a good move. If you're trying to push NATO and there's a president named Viktor Yanukovych who wanted neutrality, and you get together with forces inside the country and you support the overthrow of Yanukovych, the violent overthrow, not a good look. That's when this war started in February 2014. And then if you look at the real sequence of events, not the mind-deadening repeated mantra of the US government and the New York Times and blah, 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 that this is an unprovoked attack that started in February 2021, which 2022, excuse me, which is a nonsense. This isn't an unprovoked attack, and it didn't start then. It started in 2014. But in 2019 onward, the U.S. poured in armaments to build up a very, very powerful army. And when Biden came in, he doubled down on this whole thing because Biden and his team, Sullivan, Blinken, Newland, have been part of this story since 2014 and really before, because Biden's always been an advocate of NATO enlargement. Biden's got some dark side still to be explained about Ukraine as well because of Hunter's involvement. We don't know what that is yet, but there's something not good at all about that. But I think Newland has been on this case of NATO enlargement. She was actually the ambassador under Bush Jr. in 2008 to where? To NATO. In the 2008 meeting, when the U.S. pushed the proposition and forced everyone to agree that Ukraine would become a member of NATO. So Newland's been part of this story from way back when, from the Cheney Bush days, and she continued through the Obama administration days as the point person for the overthrow of Yanukovych in the U.S. government and for the NATO enlargement issues. And then we started arming Ukraine heavily, especially in the late 2010s. And then Biden really doubled down when he became president and repeated actually in several high-level processes that Ukraine will become a member of NATO. And to bring us to today, and just to conclude, on December 17th, 2021, President Putin tabled a Russia-NATO security agreement in a draft based on no more NATO enlargement. And I happened to call the White House after that and said, avoid a war, negotiate. It's not even a concession. Why do we want NATO in Ukraine? It's going to provoke disaster. And I was told, oh, don't worry about it, Professor Sachs, but we'll never negotiate over NATO enlargement. It's none of Russia's business. And I said, none of Russia's business? Are you kidding? It's their border, 2,300 kilometers. How can it not be their business where the American military alliance is? But we are so arrogant that we treated it as if don't have to talk to Russia about it. Then as soon as this special military operation was launched in February 2022, Zelensky said, okay, we could be neutral. And they actually exchanged documents, drafts, and negotiated a peace arrangement a year and a half ago in March 2022. And I talked to the negotiators, by the way. I talked to the mediators, the Turkish government, in detail. And you know what happened? The United States came in and told Zelensky, no, you don't agree to neutrality. You fight on. We have your back. You're going to win. You defeat Russia. Okay, now there are hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians dead. This counteroffensive of June, July, August, and September is a killing field. Ukraine doesn't have the weapons, the manpower, the training, the air cover, the artillery to do this, even if it were desirable to do. They don't have it, so they're getting smashed. And Biden doesn't have the gumption to say, you know, this was a terrible blunder. We need to agree that NATO won't enlarge and save Ukraine, but rather, oh, we're all with you for as long as it takes, meaning how many more hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians dead as long as it takes? Oh, come on, I'm 68 years old. I know what it means as long as it takes. It means some moment the U.S. leaves. That's what it means as long as it takes, with a lot of dead in Ukraine, in a country that has been absolutely pummeled by artillery nonstop, basically, on both sides since February 2022, but with a lot of shooting and killing that took place since February 2014. This is terrible. This is destroying Ukraine. This isn't protecting Ukraine. And so this is the real story. But again, the government lies to us. We don't get to debate it. And if you say it, you're a Putin propagandist, you're called. But I have written an op-ed in the last couple of days that I've put online where the Secretary General of NATO himself, someone I know quite well for a long time, Jens Stoltenberg, said when he was speaking in the European Parliament that Putin went to war to stop NATO enlargement. But we don't have to negotiate with him. Well, great favor to Ukraine.
It's interesting. I'm just looking at this map from what you're saying, and NATO has nearly successfully, completely cut Russia off from various bodies of water. I mean, you've got the Black Sea, what you're mentioning, and if they could get Georgia and the rest of Ukraine, then they'll have every other area around that Black Sea, the Baltic Sea as well. They've cut them off from the Baltic Sea with Finland.
These are choke points.
Yeah, right. Why do you think they're trying to do that? Why cut them off from the Black Sea or the Baltic Sea? I'm curious if the Caspian Sea is next. I mean, is that what you think they're going to go after that one as well?
Look, I don't know if you have used to play Risk. You know that board game? It was a board game of my youth. The idea was to have your piece on every part of the world map. Then you had taken over the world. Well, that's the neocon vision. They're playing Risk at the expense of vast numbers of deaths in many parts of the world. They want to have the U.S. military or subservient governments or supplicant governments or pliant governments everywhere on the map of the world. And this is pretty relentless. And it's kind of manifest destiny writ at the global scale. It used to be at the continental scale. Nothing could stop us. We take over all of North America. Native Americans notwithstanding, and so forth. This is manifest destiny at the global level. The only problem is others don't quite share this idea, and we are getting into an awful lot of wars, and they're very dangerous, very dangerous. This is a war with a nuclear superpower, and obviously a very powerful military. And Russia has 6,000 nuclear warheads. And they're gunning after China, at least a lot of politicians in Washington. I think in the last few weeks, Biden is trying to pull back a little bit, I think, from the brink, but scared always of his right flank that he'll be attacked for being soft on China and so forth. But there are a lot of hardliners on China that seem really to be preparing for war. Can you imagine anything more reckless, stupid, unnecessary, potentially Armageddon than that? I can't. So all of this is mind-boggling to me. But the basic answer to your question is no rational reason other than that they think they're playing global hegemon and they need their piece on every part of the map.